Why am I even here? Why am I even here?
This is why.
Why am I even here?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another
Oh,
episode of Vito and DINO. This is episode 27. My name is Vito Delsante. My co-host's name is Dean Haspiel.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dean Haspiel.
Today we
And
have,
we usually get into some bullshit before we talk about our guests, but I'm just going to introduce Dan Goldman, who I've known, I think, longer than you, Vito. I don't know. Is
yeah,
that true?
it's tough because I remember Dan and Steven coming up to New York from Florida, and I feel like we might have met them at the same time. So,
I think I met Dan, and Dan can correct me. Hi, Dan. How are you? What do you sound like?
hi everybody. I'm Dan Goldman. Thanks for having me here on your thing.
Oh, we got AI Dan Goldman, I think. I
Yeah,
feel like
no, no.
I met you at the DC offices. I think when you're working at DC, I feel that unless we met outside the offices first.
I think we met at a house party of Bob Schreck's in
Oh,
New Jersey, and there was
hmm.
dancing in the basement, and we were dancing.
hot.
And
That's what
it
how I
would
remember
probably
you meeting you first.
it probably would have just been you and me dancing because I can't imagine a lot of those people that were there, unless Bob Schreck's boyfriend might have been dancing. But I
No,
remember
there
distinctly
was.
getting to a car and driving Frank Miller back home from that party. And I started fucking with Frank Miller because I get a phone call on my flip phone, where it was however many years ago. And he's like the master of noir, and grit and daredevil and Sin City. And I started to pretend, and I was saying out loud like that my girlfriend's nickname was Poopy Bops. So I kept saying Poopy Bops, kind of thing. And then finally he was just like, "What the fuck are you saying? Like what kind of a nickname?" And then I said I was joking, but whatever. I was trying to ingratiate myself through a joke like that. So, but
I mean,
I do remember that party. I remember thinking that I had somehow been invited to the barbecue, as it were.
Mm.
yeah, and it was funny too because I did not go home in the car with Frank Miller. But we took the PATH train with a bunch of other indie cartoonists, and I was chatting with Fingerman a couple weeks ago, months ago, and that came up because I met Fingerman on that train.
Mm.
And Fingerman, there was a, I don't know how on brand this is for this podcast, but
We don't have a
there
brand.
was an older gentleman who was a friend of Shrek's at that party, and he was like hitting on me. And I had like mutton chop sideburns, and he kept touching them during the party. He kept coming up and like walking by and doing this, which is super fucked up. And anyway, so on the ride home, uh, I'm meeting like all these people that were like indie cartoonists who I had like loved and read and loved or whatever, from before I moved to New York. And so Fingerman did a drawing of me with that guy, and I told Fingerman about it, and he's like, I have no recollection of that at all. And then I said, well, hold on, I have the sketchbook here. Let me show it to you. So I took a picture of it, and he was like, yeah, I drew that. This was like 2 months ago, and it was fun. I shot him the photo over text message. He was like, yeah, yeah, that's absolutely my drawing. And I
I
was like, yeah, I
remember
thought so. I thought I'm not crazy.
that's hilarious. I remember being at a party that Evan Dorkin threw in Staten Island, his home, and you guys might have been there. I don't know.
I definitely wasn't.
Vito, you lived in Staten Island, right?
I did, but what's funny is that I wouldn't have. I don't think I would have ever been to one of Evan and Sarah's parties because even though we are adjacent to each other, we know each other through Jim Hanley's universe, and we know each other through comics. I've never been friendly enough with Evan to, be that close to him.
Right, right.
Barely.
I don't even know. I mean, I've worked with the guy, and we were friendly, and yeah, he's a hard guy to be friendly with, I think sometimes. And I love
I,
Evan, and I know he's got a lot of stuff going on. But real quick, just to finish the party thing. So that was the first time I met David Mazzucchelli, or is it Mazzucchelli? Mazzucchelli.
He's not on the show. We
Mazzucchelli.
can mispronounce it.
Right. And the way I ingratiated myself to him wasn't poopy bops in the backseat of a car on a cell phone with my girlfriend at the time, but it was I stuck out my hand with a marker, and I said, "Draw Superman on my hand, on the palm of my hand." And he looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" But I kept my hand there, and he started drawing what would turn out to be the logo of Superman. But it
Mm.
was like I think he was just like, "Who is this asshole?" Which, of course,
Yeah,
who was this
that's like
asshole?
asking going to a party that a bunch of comedians are at, and you're like, make me laugh.
Make me laugh.
Hmm.
Like
Tell me
that's
a
Yeah.
joke.
exactly what that is. Like
It's
you,
awful.
you, art man, draw. Like
Art man.
on the day that you're off, basically, and like
I
having
know.
fun,
I know.
I
draw
think
something for me, the monkey.
Art Man Draw is a really good name for a show or a podcast or something.
I'm gonna file that one away, I think.
And
Um,
actually, and I don't know if this will lead into Dan this way, but uh, I remember well, Dan may have been drawing all his life, but I remember thinking Dan was not an artist, that he was more a writer, and then he started drawing. Uh, I don't know where that fits in your oeuvre of work, but I
Funny
hmm.
do
enough,
distinctly remember thinking, "Oh, you don't? Oh, you draw? Oh, I didn't know that," kind of a thing.
Mm.
funny
You know?
enough, I remember
Th-
the book that you and Steven did. Like it was very political, had red, white, and blue cover. The name of it is escaping me right now. And I remember thinking you both wrote it, and I didn't realize that you drew it at the time until I read the credits. Like I mean, you were talking it up and stuff. So yeah,
I did not draw it.
really,
No, we co-wrote it. It was drawn by Joe Bucco.
that's right. I remember meeting him.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
was a
yeah.
it was a political, because you said right, red, white, and blue. It was called,
Mhm.
if I'm correct, it was called "Take Out Your Bush and Show It to Me," and it was about the second.
Mm. Yeah,
Sorry.
this is going to be a long show.
It always is.
Welcome to Vito and Dino
Wow. All right.
and Dan.
Yeah.
It's going to
All
be a
right.
long
Happy
show.
happy to be here.
So
But
obviously,
wait, what was the title of the book? Come on.
yeah. Let's
It was called Every Man Be the
right,
People.
right.
Be the people.
And
I
it
remember.
was designed to be, it's interesting actually that wow, we're going there. That was supposed to be the first of a series. And like my relationship with my brother, I don't think could have sustained a whole series because we just started fighting over that making that book, and I was like, this, let's just be brothers. Can we just be brothers? So but it was really interesting because like the book ends with a black president in the White House, and he looks just like Barack Obama. And I remember we had sent our print files to Quebecor, at the time. And then I was working my night job I worked nights at Pfizer doing graphic design then. And somebody sent, and my brother was texting me over AOL Instant Messenger, which we all, of course, remember. And he was like, "Are you watching this?" And it was the Democratic National Convention in 2004, and Barack Obama stood up and gave that speech that like put him on the map, and everyone was like, "Going to be that's the guy's going to be the next president." And we're watching this, and our book had already gone to press, and I was like, "What did we do? What did we like? We invented this, you know?" And nobody believed us, but it's true.
But then you did do a Barack Obama graphic novel.
I did, yeah,
Can you
yeah.
talk about
It
that for a
wasn't.
minute?
It. I can. I can. So yeah, I did that thing. It was it's
That was
called
after. That was
'08.
after Every Man.
It was yeah, it was after Every Man. And that was like a nonfiction kind of election reportage in comic form. I went out on the campaign trail. It was a collaboration with me and Michael Crowley, who's a big journalist now. He was big back then too. And that was cool. That book almost killed me. Um, it was 160 pages, and it was on the Barnes and Noble table at the Seventh Avenue Barnes and Noble on in Park Slope, like the day that Obama was inaugurated.
Wow.
Like it got not we knocked it out fast.
Wow.
It was crazy. I don't ever want to do that again. Every time there's an election, there's like a certain slice of uh, my people that even know I exist. I was gonna say fans. Let's just say people that even know I exist. That are like, "Oh, you're gonna do another one this time?" I'm
Right.
like, "No,
You
no, I am
you
not."
you probably developed some kind of PTSD from that, huh?
It was I mean, I got sick afterwards. It was
Really?
like I was very exhausted. There's like parts of that the last chunk, maybe the last like 30 pages of that book, I don't remember drawing.
Wow.
Wow.
I was so out of it. And you know how like when Obama won, do you remember that night and like Brooklyn, people were like dancing on their cars and taking off their tops and making
Hmm.
babies and
Yep.
like the whole it was like, you know, Bush is done, like it's a new era and it was so beautiful. And my ass was upstairs drawing and I experienced none of it. All I heard was like car horns honking from indoors. And I was like, comics.
Wow. That is comics in a nutshell, man. So
Right.
wait,
Yeah.
but where did shooting war happen? I remember you were probably in my apartment.
Hmm.
I think even when you got the call that you were going to be collaborating on shooting war, and you were working. I think the comic was called Kelly, right, for Activate, right? So I'll put
Yes.
this in context for the listeners. So in 2006, early 2006, we launched Activate, which was about 7 people. By the way, I'm on the 12th floor, and there's a man walking behind.
Yeah, I'm distracted by that person.
I'm
Yeah.
on the third floor, and that's a deck. Uh, anyway, um, we
You'll
had
believe
launched
him.
Activate, which was a webcomics collective. Dan was part of the original roster, and he was writing and drawing this like uh, roommate horror comic that is probably still might even be. I haven't read all of Red Light Properties. Might be my favorite thing that Dan ever did because it was so raw and visceral and fucking funny and disgusting and creepy. It was excellent. And I
Yeah.
hope
Yeah.
you do somehow. I know you. I think lost the original art or something, or and hopefully you can somehow reimagine it. But I feel like that was that. Where was Everyman in the context of that work?
Okay. Um, Everyman was published in 2004. Then Diamond, rest in peace, made it really difficult for us to get it into stores. And so I was like, this system sucks. I want to do web comics. And so my brother was like, you should start, you get on LiveJournal. And when I was on LiveJournal, everybody else was on LiveJournal at the time. And so I started doing artwork and then, you know, the call for Activate happened. So I was doing Kelly on Activate after that. Um, and then I was on unemployment for 6 months. And then I was working at your place in the spare desk. And that's when I connected with Anthony LePay for Shooting War. And then I started working on that. That's the
Was that
chronology. And then after, yeah.
was that a Smith
So
Magazine joint or something? I forget.
yeah, it was the
Okay,
first
Larry
one.
Smith. Right. So you did this graphic novel, which was like, holy mackerel. You went from doing your own free comic, like what I was doing, what everybody was doing to Activate, while trying to hustle and get work, to getting a gig, an actual graphic novel with this guy. And
Mm-hmm.
then I guess that led to the Barack Obama book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, you know, like the Shooting War was a web comic first, and then
Right.
there was like a bidding war with all these publishers, and Hachette Grand Central won, and so then I had to finish the book, and yeah, that was bananas. That was interesting. That was like, you know, I remember going. I got what was it? That book, Shooting War, was nominated for an Eisner, and I went to
Mm.
San Diego that summer, and I was in San Diego for Thursday and Friday, and like nobody wanted to know me. Like I didn't get invited to shit. And then there was a piece in Publishers Weekly Saturday morning about the bidding war, but and like Shooting War had been bought by by Grand Central Publishing, and then I got invited to everything.
Huh.
And I was like, all
See.
right, motherfuckers, I see you, you know.
Oh man, it's so obvious, isn't it?
But
It's
like
like
a good, you know, that's a reality check, and
it
one like I
is.
appreciate that kind of stuff because I mean, like you guys know me, I'm very I don't I like to be I like to live like kind of heart forward, and that makes it makes me sometimes I'm an easy punching bag, and sometimes I get hurt. But like I try to be sincere with people until they give me a reason not to be, you know. And I don't like that shit.
I
And
think I'm
so
the
when that
same way,
happened, I was
man.
like, oh, okay, all right then.
Yeah, no, I
Okay,
get it.
so
I get it.
mm,
Yeah. Oh, now you like me. Yeah, I know I hate
right.
that stuff, you know?
Hmm.
So,
But was there like any sense of because it's still pretty young at that time, it's still pretty young in your career. Is it still like some kind of form of validation though that you appreciate, like maybe not at the time, but now?
Mm. You mean people wanting to know who I was or the
Well,
book?
of that or more like, people wanting to know more about your work, like
Oh, that's
let's maybe
always welcome.
divorce that from the other. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's always, I'm always like, please be curious about me. I have so much to give. But like, um, uh, it's just there's that, there's like genuine curiosity, and then there's like the kind of performative uh part that I'm just like, thanks.
Are you able to discern the one from the other?
Most of the time. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know that I am, but like I'm
Mm.
interested in hearing what you think the differences are.
Oh, geez, how much time do we have here?
As much time as you need.
I mean,
just a,
I feel like the behavior patterns. I've thought about this a lot, like as I try to move my way through the world blind. Um, I think like New York bullshitting or East Coast bullshit and West Coast bullshit are very different
Mhm.
techniques, and it's very so like when I moved from New York to LA in 2015, I felt like I didn't speak the language, and that was weird. That it took me like a solid year to kind of like get, I don't want to say fluent, but like at least be able to speak, and kind of match that energy and deflect the bad one, So
Mhm.
that's a whole thing.
what is your favorite city? Because I always get the feeling that you go to like LA, you go to New York, you've been in Philly, I think, for a little while. I get the
Mhm.
feeling your favorite place is outside of America, and I mean, I obviously, but like, all right. So, what's your favorite place to be, or that you've experienced, right?
Mm.
And why? But versus, what do you think is wrong with these big cities that you've been in? Not that you have an answer, but like, you probably have a critique, you
But I
know?
might have a fucking opinion.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like, so all right, I like that you asked that. Let me see. I moved around a bunch, especially during the pandemic. Like my moving pattern got accelerated, and it was really weird and scary, all of it. And but I think that like my favorite city in the United States to live in, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm in South Florida now, and it's like I grew up here. It's kind of awful, but it's also kind of interesting. And so, and this is like where work is coming through me, which is good. But I think the nature of being the landscape and the topography and all that of and the vibe of being in LA was also, it was like disgusting and awful, but also really cool and really beautiful. If you can kind of look away from the business and the transactional nature of people and like how they're so cool and so um, kind of desperate, a lot of them. But there's also really great people out there. I have a lot of friends in Los Angeles.
I don't want to
I
jump
like
too
it there.
far ahead, but I feel like that informs red light properties a little bit, like both how you describe Florida and how you describe that kind of, I don't want to say desperation, but I feel like that's a word that we're kind of leaning towards, but like that kind of desperation in act in on the West Coast, and I feel like that informs your work, your current work
Mm,
anyway. Like that kind of need, like that desire, to kind of get out of something. Like it's
mm.
kind of it's not something that I can totally put my finger on, but like I feel like that informs some of it.
I mean, and so does like the grind. I mean, it was funny, like in putting this new version of Red Light Properties, the big hardcover that I just published. It's it became clear to me like last year, really clear to me that I was like, wow, like Miami is standing in, or South Florida is standing in for America. Like this is like the grind and like the sort of like the slow murder of capitalism. or capitalism slowly murdering us
Hmm.
is what I meant. Um, I really feel like that's as much a part of the book as like the supernatural,
Right.
and like everybody has to grind and everybody is, putting on a brave face and, wading into the swamp every day to do what they have to do to sort of keep the lights on and pay for your, grilled cheese sandwiches or whatever. And that's, I mean, that's what I know. Well, that's what I know. I've never been rich. So like, that's what I have to draw from is like that, um, you know, that struggle
Right. The mindset.
I
and like what that does to relationships and what that does to,
Yeah.
all of it. I
I
didn't answer the
realized,
other
and I said
question
this
though.
on.
Sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, well, to what you said here, and then hold on to the other side of the question. Um, I think that obviously you make commentary with your work. You are commenting on humanity in your work. Um, I think we all do in our work. I think I'm the least person that's political, let's say. You've definitely been political, Dan, in your work. Vito, you create characters to be political,
Yeah.
like absolutely, and I guess I shy away for some reason because I still feel blurry about my stances,
I don't know. I mean, you're saying something with AI Joe currently for that raw tech,
a
you
I mean,
know?
little
didn't you
bit.
put out COVID Cop?
And
Yeah,
COVID cop, but to me, when you read it,
Yeah.
it's still, and yes, there's little hints of, oh, you know where I
Mhm.
stand, right? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
right.
but I'm not, hopefully I'm hitting you over the head with a different thing, not with the, I'm not clobbering you with my message, as it were. And
Right.
not that you guys either. I'm just saying, I think that that's something where I was going to go with this, and you don't have to answer
Mm.
this question, is do you feel right now with everything that's going on in this goddamn administration, especially what happened today? Um, is it our job right now as cartoonists to start making protest comics or whatever the hell, or create a new Captain America that will go punch Nazis in the face? And if you want to answer that now and then get to the other part of the question, it's up to you.
Sure. I'll answer that no. Um, I think the answer is no. It's not, it's your job if you want it to be. The mic is yours. My mic is different than your mic. I don't want to say to anybody, any artist in any medium, you should be doing this. You should be doing what's coming out of you. You should be letting that come out of you, you know? Um,
I agree.
comics, freestyle rap, patchwork quilts, whatever. I mean, you should be doing what is naturally coming out of you because the less of you that's involved in the work. I'm really into the idea of, and this is a little pretentious, but like, fuck it, it's a podcast. Um, I'm really, I really strive to lose myself when I'm working and just be a conduit and let the thing that on some level, like maybe I invented it, maybe I wrote the script or whatever, but like on some level, it already is alive and it's just coming through me, and I'm the conduit, and I find that I do my best work when I am in that zone.
So wait, you're almost talking about process right now, creative process. Like
Mhm.
to be a conduit for an idea, sure. I think one of the things that happens, and I think we can all speak to this, is the whole idea of like after a while the characters start writing themselves, that kind of a thing, right? That's all happened to us. But are you
Mhm.
saying has there been a project where you're like, I don't know what to do next, and suddenly pretentious beam of light, purple light comes over and showers you, and your
Mm.
hand starts drawing all of a sudden? What's happening here? Not that,
Yeah.
but what is it you think? What's the cosmic thing that's happening?
I don't know if I would call it cosmic, but I mean, I was listening to Mark Maron recently, and he was talking about how sometimes he's on stage and he's got a joke that is like most of the way there. And then he goes out like night after night. And one night, like the best part of it is delivered while he's on stage. And I like that idea. Like that's conduit to me. Like delivering makes it sound like it comes from on high, from the divine. And I don't want to be that way about myself. But I think that, you know, if there is any idea of us being of our minds and or our culture being kind of collective and unified, and if there's any idea that like all culture or all information is its own thing, then we are just conduits, right?
I
I
and
mean,
I
keep,
think
you know,
I think that also like the idea of like Mark Maron going out and workshopping, let's call it, right? And just keep working on this thing. I have definitely and I actually kind of learned this from Paul Auster, the late Paul Auster, the writer. I saw him do a reading and he was taking questions. And I think I might have asked him something like, would you ever do, write an original graphic novel? And he said no, even though there was a graphic novel out, with three adaptations, right, of his work.
mhm.
Um, but he somehow something else came up with like part of his process. How do you write every day? And he said he ends the day starting a new idea or asking a question that he hasn't answered. So overnight, when he comes back in the morning to the thing, oh, there's a question
Mhm.
for me to answer, like or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
or the middle of an idea that he didn't complete. So now he's had a whole night or sleep, and he might not even thought about any of it, right? And it's just
yeah,
somehow prompting him. And I think that that's a conversation that you have as an artist with yourself and the project that you don't even
absolutely.
know you're having, right? Half the
Hmm.
time. So that
Yeah,
delivery, that thing that happens, because it's kind of like even when you're looking at a piece of art and you go, you know what, it's not working. I'm going to walk away from it for the day. And when you come back,
hmm.
you're like, oh, I just got to do this. What the hell was I thinking?
I did those the Priya Shakti comics for India, right?
Remember that.
And I had started working on them before I was able to start drawing them. And so I was like, I'm going to read and I'm going to look at Indian art and I'm going to learn as much as I can about the culture and I'm going to eat food and I'm going to listen to music while I'm finishing this other thing that I'm still on for a couple months. And so, and what did I had some cheesy metaphor about it back in the day, but I was like, you know, I got to get the broth ready. That was it. It was like a sauce or some shit. It was a culinary thing, but I
Mm-hmm.
was like, you got to like set the pot and get it ready before you add the spices and all that. So it smells right before you add the vegetables and the whatever. So
This is a
that
weird
I think there's that too, you know?
This is a
Sorry.
weird observation. No, no, no. I was going to say this is a weird observation, but I don't think I've ever heard, with the exception of maybe Morrison, tripping in Kathmandu and figuring out, I forget the King Mob character for the Invisibles, but I don't think I've ever heard someone describe a process that was similar to basically method acting. Where you've
Mm,
just totally like, even though you weren't working on the work, you're immersing yourself to get ready for the work. Like it's like the best thing I mean, I had a stage background at one point. So
oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Mm,
I kind of see things, in that way sometimes. And that is the most method acting I've heard of creating comics. And that's very like, did you ever like, it's weird. You mentioned that comic, and I was like, is that why I think Dan is so spiritually attuned to the way he makes comics? Like, and then you mentioned, like immersing yourself, and I was like, now it makes sense. Like now, it kind of like he put himself into that trance almost, and kind of created a world where he was immersed in it. So, like,
and
it's
like that came from terror. That came from a fear of being the only white person on a team of like either Indians or Indian Americans. But I didn't, and I was the artist. I was the designer, and I was like, I cannot fuck this up. This was a bad look if I don't do my work.
but
So
this is post the Obama comic, if I remember right.
yeah,
So
that's
Can
right.
you just tell? Can you just say in a nutshell what Priya's Shakti is?
I mean the project's kind of still going on, but I helped create it and then I did the first two books. They're like kind of large floppies, independently produced, and if you've never seen it, like you probably can't get one. But it was this kind of Indian teenage girl heroine who was she was designed to be kind of like a super symbol to stand against like sexual violence and acid attacks and all these terrible things that humans do to other humans. And and it was very geared towards like digital native uh Desi community diaspora. And yeah, it really hit. It was there's probably more people that have seen that than anything else I've ever done. But for me, it was an opportunity because I've always loved Indian culture and I love the aesthetic and the food and the music and everything. Just always loved it. Um, I can trace my love of Indian culture to a restaurant in North Miami Beach that I went to for the first time at 10. And they were playing music and they were burning incense and the food blew my mind. And the woman waiting the table was like the mother of the family, but she was like beautiful and pregnant. And I was just like, can I just live here? You know, it was just amazing. Anyway, I'm like, eating like all this shitty Jewish food and McDonald's. And I'm like, I want to live in this. Anyway, what was I talking about? Priya Shakti. So yeah, for me, it was an opportunity for the first time. And really like, I only got to do it twice, um,
How did
to
you get
play
the
with
gig
that
though?
stuff.
Why you?
Why me? I know, right? It's weird. I was coming off of one project and I was looking for something else. And my brother told me about this yeah, I forgot the name of it, but it was um like a transmedia New York meetup. And so I went and I was like, everyone's just like look, scanning the crowd with their business card. Who am I going to schmooze with? And I was bored. And I was like, I don't want to do this. So I turned to walk out and I bump my belly against this other guy's belly. And we're like, oh, they like kind of knocked the wind out of both of us. And that was Ram Devaneni. And so we literally bumped into each other and then started talking because it was like so kind of like our faces in each other's faces, and we just started chatting. And then, oh, you're a comic artist. I'm looking for a comic artist. And I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. Yeah, here's my card. Email me. And he sent me this whole proposal. Like by the time I got home, and he turned out to be super legit, and it was a really cool experience.
That's cool.
That's how
That's
I got the
very
gig.
cool.
Yeah,
You
just be
you
literally bumping into the right person.
you've collaborated with writers, definitely early on, and then with this project as well. But and Vito, you have to collaborate because you don't really draw,
Right.
right? But and I know the answer, but I assume you prefer to write what you draw, Dan, right? Like, so what were your experiences with collaboration versus
Hmm.
auteur type stuff?
I mean, the writers I've collaborated with weren't comics writers, so it's a little weird, you know. Like, have I collaborated with like a black belt I have not, you know. So I don't know what that's like. It's like having a dance partner that doesn't know the moves.
Hmm.
So so that's so have I mean so given that, like, yeah, I prefer to work on my own stuff, and that would be solo. But if somebody like a comic writer who came to me and was like, I love your art, I think your writing sucks, but like
Right, right.
like I'd love to work with you. And it was like somebody whose work I'm crazy about, like, yeah, I'd be into it, I think I'd be into it.
I'm trying to look up the title right now of the book that you did not draw that you wrote recently for
Oh,
humanoids.
Chasing Echoes.
Yeah, so what was that like?
Hmm. What was that like? That was a hard project. It was something that I pulled. It's based in uh, a real life experience that I went through with my own family, and then I kind of reinvented. I created like a fictional family because I wanted my family to still speak to me once the book came out because they're like that. And yeah, and then I recruited a friend of mine from Brazil who didn't live in Brazil anymore, but Jeje Schal is really talented and she's somebody I wanted to work with forever. And so I pitched her hard at Humanoids and fought to get her the gig. And yeah, the book was I don't know what to say about it. It was something I had to like kind of pull out of myself, and I was
Well,
processing like
I
yeah.
guess what I'm asking also is like why didn't you want to draw it? Number one. Number two, what's that like? Like I've had very few um collaborations where I was just the writer. I can't even really even think of what they are. I know I have, you know, like I
Mhm.
did, I think a 4-pager with Michel Fiffe where he drew something that I wrote.
I've
I
heard
don't
of
think I
him. Yeah.
you remember him.
I'm
Um,
messing with you.
no, I know, but original Activate. But it is odd. Like, I mean, I feel like, oh, I can definitely write. You know, I've written plays, I've written movie, you know, where you
Yeah,
have to
you have.
collaborate. You know, like,
Hmm.
but it's very rare. So, did you know you didn't want to draw this, and was there a reason? And then I also know, and we're jumping ahead, that you're playing another project where you're the writer and not drawing it. So
Yeah.
that's you casting the artist in a way, you know?
Yeah, or choosing a collaborator,
Hmm.
Do you feel
really.
like
I
they
mean, it's
have
more
to?
that.
Do you feel like they have to stand in for you? Like you have to draw this better than me if I were to draw. You know what I mean?
No.
Okay.
No.
I don't. I know what you mean, but it's not how I feel.
I don't.
If it's a collaboration, like I don't want to put anybody's work against my own, especially if I'm too lazy to do it myself,
Mhm.
you know? Like with the humanoids book, it was kind of, I wasn't sure I wanted to draw comics anymore. I'll be totally honest with you. And I was I was trying really hard to kind of crack like working in TV, and I had managed to crack a little bit of animation and not quite yet in video games, but I was fighting really hard and losing in Los Angeles at that time. And when that we went on that trip, I'm going back like 3 questions, but it'll all come around.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when my family went on this trip, for those of you at home who don't know what I'm talking about, so Chasing Echoes is about a Jewish American family descended from Holocaust survivors, and they all kind of they're all spread out like American families are, and everybody they decide to meet in Poland, and the trip starts as a well, they meet in Poland because they want to find land that was taken from their grandfather when the Nazis rolled into Poland, and that was based on a real trip. And it was that it was weird. It's hard even like years later to say what it did to me, but there was this feeling like I'm not religious. It didn't make me more religious. It kind of made me maybe confirmed my like disgust for the whole thing. But what it there was something incredibly powerful about like taking off my shoes in like this little town by a railroad with 4 houses that like my grandfather and his brothers and sisters lived there, and I put my feet in the grass, and they were like little bees and little flowers. I was just like it just felt like kind of time looped around, and it was very magical in a strange way. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it
But let me. How are you open to that? Like, where does that come from? It's not a criticism. I'm just.
hmm,
I take. I mean, I think a lot of us take so many things for granted, right? You just don't. But like to know, to just be open to that, and to take off your shoes and put your feet in the grass.
hmm,
Where is that coming from? You
I don't
know,
know.
did that come from your desire to travel? I know you love to travel. Is that part of your
I mean,
openness to the
I
world?
think that I think the travel is a symptom. I think the openness is the condition, and I think that's just who I am. I've always been like that. I don't, maybe not always, but you want to get deep? So um, there was a version of me that uh, took with a early girlfriend, took some LSD for the first time when I was 19, and was way over my head. But when I got all the way all the way into where I was going, I understood that I could rearrange things inside myself and inside my mind and come out healthier. Like I get rid of shit that wasn't working. So like I kind of like I don't know if this is making any sense or I'm going to sound like I'm trying to be Grant Morrison, which I'm not. But like uh in like neuroscience, they used to call this metaprogramming, but um you remove bad behaviors and you can do it faster with psychedelics than you can with therapy. So I understood what was happening and I was like, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't like this person. I don't like this piece of myself. And so I I popped out of that experience, I was like, oh, I'm a different version of myself now. Like I isolated the bad stuff and I moved it out of the way. And that helped me be open from there. I was never that open before that, is my way of answering the question.
And what were you studying that you even knew to even approach
Hmm.
circumstances or life or what you just described
Yeah.
this way? Like, did that
At
come from
that
a Grant Morrison comic book or another
No, no,
experience?
no.
You met somebody?
I was reading Grant, but I was reading The Invisibles, and that was like very I remember, wow. Okay, I can tell you that I had bought the Invisibles issue 5 of the first volume. That's where I can place exactly the month that I had this experience. Um, and I and I didn't read it until afterwards. I had it in like on the trip with me. Um, the trip meaning like I went to St. Louis to see this girl who gave me the acid. Um, I'm losing my train of thought. Where are we at now with
Oh
this?
no, I was just like I'm like you've always been spiritual, cosmic, Grant Morrison, like since I've known you,
Mm,
and I might have lazily attributed to like, oh, you're from Miami or something, like,
hmm
and but it does come from seeking some kind of thing, like
Yeah.
you're clearly interested early on, to be able to compartmentalize, get rid of. Like today, it's like, oh, like for instance, I realize, and I'm trying to be better at this, that I'm attracted to conflict. That
Yes, you
I
are.
like to fight. I like to yell.
Yes.
That's where I
Mm,
learn love because of stuff, right?
Punch and
Um,
a kiss.
a punch and a kiss. I always try to get a punch and a kiss in every comic I ever do. Like
hmm
so. Okay, so and maybe I could pinpoint where that comes from. Uh, and yet, you're very different. I mean, we're all very different, of course, but
mm.
I know where I can pinpoint that. And I guess it was were
I
your
mean,
parents like that? Or
I no,
like
no. I
no.
am a complete black sheep in my family, all of the family. And I have always been a seeker. I love change, which is why I move. It's why like when somebody hasn't seen me for a couple months and like, oh, your beard's different, your hair's different, I don't recognize you. Like, what the fuck are you wearing? Like, you know, um,
Hmm.
that always happens to me. People are like, oh, I didn't recognize you. And it's like I'm always changing, and that's fun. It keeps things interesting. I think it's why I smoked pot for a long time, was that it made like something ordinary a little more interesting. I don't
Mm.
smoke pot anymore, but I yeah, it was interesting too. Like I mean I moved to LA where marijuana was legalized and I stopped smoking it and I traded it for meditation. And that was unbelievably huge in my life.
Hmm.
So
Going from one to the other.
how do you reconcile that level of spirituality, or maybe not spirituality, but self-understanding with the environment that you find yourself in that has inspired red light properties? Like how do you reconcile those three different things, I
Hmm.
guess?
Hmm. Let me unpack that for a second. I mean, I feel like spirituality and then like meditation are like they're kind of different things to me. Meditation is really like a way to sink past the noise and just be more in tune with yourself. And that's like sits outside of any beliefs at all.
Mhm.
It's like you sit down and you shut the fuck up. And if you sit the right way and you sit for long enough, and it doesn't have to be a long time, it's just practice. But you sink beneath what I feel like our conscious minds, especially with these goddamn phones and social media and everything, Um, you have like a Pacific garbage patch a mile deep that sits on top of every thought you have, and you very rarely go beneath it. But underneath it, it's beautiful
Mhm.
and quiet. But
Yeah,
you have to learn how to get underneath it. And that's what meditation is.
but as
So
somebody
that's
that
not your question though. Yeah.
no, but as somebody that values quiet and like uses it almost as a tool, you know,
Mm-hmm.
not so much,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like maybe not so much in terms of your work, but I can see that. You're surrounded by all this noise outside the door, you know, with people that are politically not aligned with the way you are, you know, or that are voting against your interest. And I don't know that I'm probably not wrong in saying this, but I don't find you as being a self-motivated person. I feel like you're motivated by what helps the collective and what helps everyone, you know,
Mm.
to a degree, maybe lesser or more, but you know, I think that you're one of those people that are willing to give a helping hand. Do you know what I mean? Like that
Mm.
are I wouldn't necessarily call you socialist or anything like that, but I feel like, you know, that's not too far off of Dan Goldman that I've known for
Mm.
some odd years or maybe just a little under. But like, how
Yeah.
do you reconcile those two things? Like the quiet that brings you your art and then the noise that is probably also informing your art. Like,
Okay. All right. I understand the question. So I mean, that's a struggle. Like that is, and I feel like it's getting harder every year because the noise is pretty intense,
right.
even now. But also, I mean, what helps me live is to read political headlines so that I'm not in the dark and don't read the articles.
Hmm.
You know, like what's like the record groove scratch that I can get where I understand what the fuck is going on, but I don't let it inside me to like infect me or coat me because I think that it's poison and most of it is a circus. It's just for show anyway.
You couldn't be more
We're you know, like we're in this
sure.
era where we're like, and it's been like this for a while, certainly 10 years, where like the reality show has replaced reality for a lot of people. And that's not what life is. Even today. Like you asked me what's it like to go outside where there's people that don't vote the way I vote. Like they're just neighbors. And some of them are fucking assholes.
Yeah.
But they also some of them have kids. Some of their kids are cute. And like, you know, I go for walks in the park. Like I don't think about who's voting unless they're flexing like a red hat or something. I'm just like, no, good morning. You know, I just try to be a person. I just try to be present.
You know, today,
And
I
you
was gonna
know,
say today I had we were driving, my mom, my kids, Michelle and I, we were driving somewhere and my mom and I got into an argument about Chick-fil-A. And my son, he's very sensitive to things like that. And he's like, why are they fighting? Are they done fighting? You know, like, and I'm like, we're not fighting, you know, we're arguing. We don't agree, but you know, we
mm,
don't, you know, and it's the same way. I mean, like, um, I don't know that I could ever cut off family for, you know, doing something I wouldn't do like that. But I'm not gonna not say something because I gotta say something, you know.
mm.
I don't know. It's a little bit tougher with neighbors and coworkers and stuff like that, I'm sure. So, so yeah,
I
but
mean,
like I appreciate that you have that inner ability to kind of go into the quiet, you know, like find your quiet.
sometimes. I mean, you know, I have like, you know, I have some fraught uh relationships and some live wires with family. And but you know, some situations are harder than others. You know, I don't like you know, sometimes if I'm threatened with violence, like I don't do well with that. Um, I'm not a fighter, but I get really upset by it. I'm very sensitive to people's energy. And so if somebody comes at me, even if they're coming at me with like, you know, not violence, but you're just being like a complete fucking asshole, you know, like I get upset, you know. I'll walk away and I'll think of all the stuff I should have said and I'll spiral into, I mean, like we all do what we can do. Like life is hard and people are rough and it's everything's just complicated. And it's just about like, how are you going to live, you know? I thought about that a lot during the worst of the pandemic that was like the first year of things for me was like, I'm not going to try to write or draw. I'm not going to try to do anything creative. I'm going to try to peel off like whatever I was, because I was like when COVID hit, I was in LA. I was still on that grind. Like I had a whole, you know, I was with a really interesting collection of producers trying to get real life properties made, and we were, I had a meeting with the AMC network, and it went great. And it was April 6th, 2020. And like, you know, a week later, LA locked down, and then 2 weeks after that, Hollywood was dead, and that deal was definitely dead, and nobody knew what was. So anyway, boohoo. But um, when we left LA and came out to Florida, and I was like, this is good in a way. Personally, hopefully this doesn't go on forever, but um, I just wanted to see if like I was gonna if I stopped and I didn't need to be that person, and I just lived and I ate food and I went for walks and I had healthy poops and like
You're describing something that I wouldn't have put it that way, but
mm,
it's something I so desperately need to do. And part of the way you describe meditation is the first time I ever understood meditation, or at least the way you do it. When you talked
mm,
about all the garbage on top of the part that you should be listening to, or the quiet, or whatever it is about
yeah,
you. And I was imagining, I was visualizing, oh, digging through with a flashlight, through the muck, and you get to the quiet place. And then as you were saying that, I realized how frightened I am of quiet. I use a
yeah,
white noise machine to go to sleep. I have
right,
sound because the quiet is so loud to me for whatever
hmm
that problem is. And so obviously, I mean, we're not trying to have a therapy session here right now, but it's really interesting the things you talk about, because I don't confront certain things like the quiet, right? But and this is maybe an adjacent thing, and this could lead into the red light properties unfinished business in the future. But like in the last couple of years, I joked, but not joked, that I quit comics in 2023 so
I
I could
remember.
like do my thing more so than ever before. Paul Pope is known as the comics destroyer. I was doing my own comics destroying in a way, where I became allergic to pitching to publishers and all this other stuff. So
Mm,
my struggle, and this is part of the quiet, is when I sit down to draw, which takes me forever to get there. It's easier for me to write or to be at the computer or whatever for some reason. But when I'm over there, it's really quiet. And then I have to
mhm.
remember what goes through my head when I draw. What was I like when I was a kid and I used to draw? And I only wanted to draw, right? Um,
Yeah,
and so I do wonder, why am I writing and drawing the next project? Besides it being, quote, for me first or whatever, why?
hmm
Why are we doing any
right,
of this? So with
yeah.
that, I asked both of you guys, why the hell would you write or draw another comic book? And why are you doing
Well,
this?
I mean, again, like kind of so where I found myself with all of that was, why do I need to be this person at all? Just because I've been doing it for 40 years or whatever it was, why do I even need to be this guy? Do I need to be this guy? And so I was like, you know what? Shit is wild right now. I'm gonna I'm gonna be alive. I'm gonna be in my apartment, not get sick. I'm gonna play video games. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do. Read a lot of books, watch a lot of films. I did all of that. And if I get itchy again, there's your answer. And so what do you find like when you go below the garbage patch? And the garbage patch includes like career, ego, workplace, not workplace, excuse me, marketplace. The market trend, oh, I'm gonna do something that sells or perform. What the fuck does that mean? What does success mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's different
Branding.
for all three of us, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't none of it's all bullshit.
Right.
So when you get below that and you're just drawing, and you just said it, Dean. You're like, well, I draw. I feel like I used to when I drew as a kid. Like that's the thing I chase.
Well, and the way I put it is and we said this to Jonathan Ames. One of my favorite things that Jonathan Ames said is that when he was teaching writing, was to find, and this isn't possible, but to try to find joy in every sentence you write, kind of a thing.
Hmm
And so I was trying to find the joy of comics again, because you want to be a professional, you want to be good enough, and then I'm not good enough, and then I deal with imposter syndrome and all this other crap. I'm sure we've all dealt with imposter syndrome, you know. And but who's telling you if you're good enough or not? It's the people who hire you or the
And
stupid
who the fuck are
family.
they?
And who
Who
the
are
fuck
they?
are they? Right.
You know?
But you have to work.
So,
You have to work somehow. I mean, we now have arrived at a place where you literally can say, "Who the fuck are they?" Because
mhm,
you just do it all yourself, right? But before that, you had to be sanctioned, or you were just a penciler.
mhm,
Someone else inked you. Someone else wrote this. All the the assembly line, right, of creators.
right.
Um, all that stuff is now been kind of the playing field has been leveled, as you know. And who do you run your ideas by?
Mm.
Anyone?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I talked to my wife Lily about stuff. Um, she's been my sounding board for 20 years or more, a little more now. Um, she's a good bullshit detector. She's a woman of very good taste. I used to joke when we first got involved, we first moved in together 20 years ago, that like I'd go to the comic store and I'd bring home a stack of comics, and let's say I had 20, and she'd look at them and she'd pick out two and she'd read one of those two. And that was the best thing in the pile every single week. I'm serious. Like she just boop, 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 she like lasered in on it always. So I always use her as a sounding board. I mean, I got other friends. I bounce stuff off, but mostly it's her. And it's also you get to your beard's gray enough, you learn to trust yourself. You learn that like, oh, I fucking know what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
finally,
Well, let's
you
ask the
know?
million-dollar question. What does she think of red light properties?
She likes, I
Good.
mean, I don't want to, I mean, she doesn't hate it. No, she's proud of me, and I know she knows what it means to me, and she's also like, I mean, she's helped me beyond measure with like producing it, and I don't mean financially. I mean like posing for reference photos, like the shit I've put that woman through. You can't even imagine. You can't even imagine like how
So a lot of
patient.
people are no, I can totally imagine. Oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it but you have said to me, and maybe even in interviews, that red light properties unfinished business is your most favorite thing you've produced to date, right?
Ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is awesome. So for the listeners, just let them know what red light properties is about, and where it's going, and
Mm.
what does it mean to you?
I don't think you can do that any justice without showing our viewers exactly what we're talking about because
That's true. If you
it
have
is
a
You're gonna make me
while
get up,
while
and I'm not even
talking,
wearing. I'm not even
you
wearing
have to.
pants.
It's
you're not wearing.
amazing.
Oh, it looks beautiful, but well, you don't need pants for this.
All right. You ready for that? All right.
Oh, meanwhile, we're talking to each other.
Can
And the
I can
camera's
I
not
show
on.
you, Dean? Um,
Yeah,
this little empty closet
yeah.
is a meditation space.
Do you face the wall or out?
I face the wall. I face the wall,
Is
like
that a
about like
Buddhist
that.
type thing? Is that a Buddhist temple? Wait, what am I looking at down
I'll
there?
show you. I'll show you.
And you face the wall.
Yeah, face the wall. Remove distraction. I sit on this. So you
Wow.
sit, you tuck your legs, and you get into the correct position. There's a book that I'll share with you. I'd hold it up, but my copy is with a friend. But it can teach you the technique, and just all you got to do is sit down and be quiet. And it takes time, but it works.
There was a time in high school where I was doing a musical, and before
Yep.
the musical, I was meditating, and I just remember sitting on a bench, not in like lotus position, but just like cross-legged. And I remember, and I described this to Michelle once or twice, and I remember kind of leaving. I know it sounds cheesy, but I remember kind of leaving my body, but like I felt a smile on my face, but I felt it in my knees. So I feel like I
Hmm.
lift it up
Oh, that's
this
interesting.
high,
Hmm.
like from my body, so take
That
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 for what you will.
That's
that's really
interesting because like when you get like deeper into the state,
Mhm.
the what's down there is this very, I don't want to say like a yippee kind of joy, but it's like a subtle,
Oh yeah.
like you start to feel like light, you know, light in yourself. Anyway, um,
before you get to red light properties, just to respond to Vito and you adjacently,
mm,
I do know the only times I felt like a sense of uh egoless and I don't need to talk and shut the fuck up has been either when I've gone to the Russian Turkish bathhouse or I'm in a hot tub,
mhm,
like in hot water for some reason.
yeah,
Washing dishes with hot water
hmm,
allows me to think and not and remove the shackles of whatever.
yeah,
Being in a hot tub or at the like a spa like that, where ultimately I just surrender, right? And um when I used to go to Sonny's bar, which I'm going to this Monday, and we'll talk about that later. And I was introduced to bluegrass, like
hmm,
freestyle bluegrass music, which I don't listen to, but to me, it got me about as close to like feeling a sense of religion or something, where I
hmm,
had nothing to say. I'd be hanging out with
yeah,
Mike Houston or whoever, and for hours say nothing. And sometimes someone would talk and be like, "Shut the fuck up." Like let them do their thing and shut up.
right.
So
So
anyway,
that's interesting too. Like, so you said the word surrender, which is like surrender is also you just kind of like put yourself down for a minute. You
yeah.
just be here. And when you surrender, what you have is presence. You're here right now. You're just breathing, just experiencing, you're listening, you're seeing, you're feeling. That's kind of the point. That's what we're doing here. And you do that together and it becomes beautiful. That's
Mm,
it. It's just
mm.
that simple, you know? I used to be envious. Like I had a bunch of friends when I was younger. I used to have a bunch of friends when I was younger. That was sad. No, when I was younger, I had a bunch of friends made music, a lot of musicians, and I was always jealous of them because I would draw. Even if I wasn't making comics, I was always like a doodler, wannabe cartoonist. And somebody had to look at my stuff and pay attention to it. Whereas music was like in the air and like
Hmm.
everybody would just, even if they weren't looking or they were doing something else, like you'd feel it, you'd hear it, you'd turn, you'd be like, oh, that's so hot. I love that. Oh my God. So I always envied that like you could reach people without having to um, demand their undivided attention to do something like read or engage with visual art. So
That's the power of
I
music.
still,
I
yeah.
think of all the mediums, from art, comics, cinema, when it comes to music, it's the one that wins every time
Hmm.
somehow because of what it can
Yeah.
do in so many
Hmm.
ways, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also innately what it can do. So
I think cinema, not like TV, but cinema can do that too. But it's like you have to be able to encounter it. And I think that we're all trained for TVs and now, this shit. And so you see a screen, you look at it. You go to a bar now, and there's like 19 screens, and everyone's just and no one talks to each other, and it's so sad, and it's just so like bars are dystopian to me now.
I was at a bar a week ago at
Mm.
what was it called? Brooklyn Social, which is right down the block from me on
Yeah,
Carroll and
yeah.
Smith. And I've been going
Hmm.
there for years and I hadn't gone in a long time. And I walk in and it's still the old, same old bar, whatever, and it's cool. And there was a woman sitting at the bar with the biggest headphones I've ever seen. Giant headphones, looking at her phone. I'm like, why are you here?
You could have done that at home.
You're not allowed to be here. I,
Hmm.
in my
She
totalitarian
might have been
utopia, you don't belong here.
right. Well, she might have been like, waiting for her Tinder date to message her.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, it
Who
says
knows?
social right on the
I don't
door.
judge. Right. Yeah. Well, maybe that means
Sit
that
on
hits
the door.
different nowadays. You know,
Oh
the Brooklyn
man.
Social Media Club.
So red light
I don't
properties,
know.
man. Tell
Hmm.
us.
Let's see
Red
this.
light properties.
Boom,
Show us. Tell
boom,
us.
boom, 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 boom. Bow, bow, bow. So yeah, this is the
Mm-mm.
front cover. Yeah. Unfinished Business. I don't know what I was thinking, like putting the hand over the fucking logo, but that I was just in that mood that day. And then this is the back. And so see that. So it's Red Light Properties is about Jude Tobin and Cecilia Matos, who are husband and wife. Jude is he's a psychic and an exorcist, and she's a real estate broker. And when you put those two things together, you get previously haunted real estate. You can tell I've been
Mm.
doing this for a minute, right? And so they live in South Florida, and they this is what they do for a living. And so this book is uh, a like heavily reworked George Lucas again collection, but it has so there was a piece of this book that was published by IDW in like 2014, and then that was 200 pages, and there's like another 150 pages of story in here that's never been in print before. And so I'm calling this Unfinished Business is the title of season one of Red Light Properties. And so uh yeah, it's interesting. You
And
want to
you
know
self-publish it, and you self-publish it. So where
yeah, I did everything
that's
with this book. So
yeah,
like
you did everything.
I worked with the printers, I did all the design. Um and the book, when you open the book, you enter this like liminal space where it says, "Hello, old friend." Oh, it's backwards. "Hello, old friend. It's me, Florida." And Florida speaks to you through a variety of avatars and spirits and enters, it kind of coaxes you out of our world and into their world. And then at the end, you float back out again. Like you
Mm,
have to cross through the dimensional barrier into
mm,
their world. Yeah, so what is it? So like, yeah, haunted houses. Okay, sure, whatever. But um there's a it's a family business. There's a failing marriage. It's he does the exorcists are performed. He's psychic, which means he can like, and he has psychometric abilities, which means that he could like touch this table and be like, "Ooh, somebody fucked here," and so that's cool. Like he sees ghosts wherever he goes. It's made his life hell his entire life. But with the right amount of psychedelics, he can pass through the membrane that separates the living world and the spirit world, and then he can go talk to them. Because normally when he sees ghosts, it's kind of like a looping record. Like they're kind of stuck in that moment wherever they got stuck, and the ghost won't let go, and maybe they don't know they're dead. Even that happens sometimes. But when he goes when he goes through the membrane with the psychedelics, then the story becomes kind of like time travel, and they become little theater pieces. They're kind of like self-contained, and it's up to him to sort of get like to solve the puzzle and let the ghost be free, and then they can sell the property. So half of it, so he does the ghost part, and then the sort of joke that it's not a joke because it comes out of her mouth all the time is she does every other fucking thing.
yeah.
Like she does all the emotional labor, she does all the business, she runs the
Right.
family, she does the cooking and the grocery shopping and everything too. Like he does basically nothing because if he's not doing the exorcisms, he's like either whacked out trying to come down or he's complaining that no one listens to him and that he works so hard. Boo hoo me.
Right.
So
Right.
that's season one. And that dynamic slowly kills their marriage.
Mm.
And that's where we end season one is they basically uh they decide that even though they can't split up the business because then
Right.
like everything sinks, but they are kind of at a point where they are realizing they don't really work well as a couple as they are. And so she's going to date. He's got some work to do on himself. And if are they going to come back together? Are they not? Will they? Won't they? And so yeah, but
Maybe he
there's
hooks
much
up with
more.
a ghost.
Yeah, it's happened before. That's a whole story. But
Yeah.
no, really, it is. But there's a lot of like zooming out from them. There's a whole sort of like sweaty universe that is partly like socio-political about Florida in the 21st century, and then also metaphysical, which is about like what was Florida before we colonized it, like who was here and what was here, and where what is the kind of uh soul vortex that
Mm.
that brings people here and keeps them here. And so there's a lot of these kind of juicy ideas that I'm digging into immediately, like because I'm working on new stories now. Um, and I'm going to be like next month, I'm going to be launching season two on my newsletter. And I will be serializing in like bi-weekly chunks, all new stuff like forever. And so when I have enough, like when season two is banked, I'm going to put out another hardcover, and then I'll
Hmm.
start working on season three immediately.
Hmm.
And I want to do that until it's done. And
Hmm.
I think that is right now it feels it could be 5 books, it could be 7 or 8 books. I don't know yet, but I know there's a lot of room and a lot of legs here. And there's a lot of I can tell any kind of story with this and keep it evolving and interesting.
It's
So
great, and I hate to say it, but it also sounds like a great TV show.
I was thinking the
Like,
same thing.
but I mean, sounds like a great comic first, and yet it could be a great TV show.
How many
And
pages is it? Where can people get it? And how many people
oh,
can you
Vito, I
kill with
love
that?
you. Thank you.
And how many people can you kill with that thing?
I could kill a young kitten,
no,
and I could damage a newborn baby with this. No,
Oh,
no, the book is like it's 340 pages. It's 4 pounds, and I only know that because I run a warehouse with it. Like I do all the fulfillment and everything, so I know like the I have this edition, and then I have a oh let me get it since I'm on like QVC now. Give me one second.
I'm sure everyone's
So I
actually. I'm sorry.
yeah, everyone's been looking at my ass, right?
Well, I was going to say
So
they noticed that you're actually wearing pants. So,
oh yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, I was just joking. Um, so so this is like the deluxe edition, which is a slipcase and has all this like nice texture. And so we have doo-doo, and then you have Cecilia and their son Arturo on the back. And I yeah, and then the book is landscape, and the slipcase is horizontal,
yep,
so that people that get this edition can shelve it and not complain that it sticks out because I knew they would. And so I kind of solved that problem in a creative way that I thought was kind of neat. Um, yeah, that's my spiel. You have questions about
and
it?
people. Well, I was going to bring up a couple other things. People can get
Oh
this on
wait,
your
I was
website.
supposed to yeah, I was supposed to say where they can actually buy it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
sort of that's the job, right? So at so you can get the book from the Kinjin Story Lab website, which is my publisher, and that is at shop.kinjin kinjin.co. And that's the thing. And I will hopefully you can put a link, pretty
oh no, we
please.
always do. We
Yeah.
And
always.
yeah.
Co's for cool.
Um,
All right, so I'm gonna ask a really obvious question because we're nerds. So the way you were describing red light properties,
mm.
um, well, it's funny because even your earlier work, the more politically inclined work, um, uh, could could you see yourself ever writing Captain America? And could you ever see yourself writing Doctor Strange?
Doctor Strange would be easier than Captain America, but I don't like either character.
Oh,
I don't like either one of them. I think they're both boring as shit. But there are characters that I would be into, for
like who?
sure. Um, I really love pre-crisis extended Superman extended family, or like the pre-crisis Krypton mythology. And I have a really cool idea. Yeah, hear me, DC. Uh, that they will never call me about because I've never gotten an email or a phone call or a job offer from any comic book company ever. But yeah, I actually like, believe it or not, I really like Superman. Um, I'm of a certain age that like that means something different than what he is now. And that's true. I mean, I love Spider-Man. I think Superman for me is there's something really neat about him. And I don't know if I would write him, but I would write what he means to other people, I think is very interesting.
Well, that's interesting, but also he's an immigrant, and I feel like he's Jewish
Hmm.
to
I
some
don't,
degree.
I mean, maybe, but like that has nothing to do with what I like about him. I think I
Okay.
just like I was I was like 5. You're gonna love this. I was 5, I think in when the movie came out, the first movie. I
78.
saw it in the theater. Oh, so I wasn't 5, I was 4. So but totally like imprinted on that. And it's just something I get emotional about, which, I mean, I'm not like a superhero comics guy at all. I talk shit about but like I have a love for that. That it's imprinted. When I was in kindergarten, I went to a private school in Detroit and I had to wear a little uniform with a jacket and a tie. And underneath my uniform, and nobody knew it, I wore a Superman t-shirt and a cape. So I always had like a humpback. And like it was months before anybody noticed what the hump was. The hump was my cape was bunching up underneath my jacket, my sport coat. That's
That's
true.
amazing. I never knew that. Vito has an adjacent story that I think you've shared on the interviews and on the podcast before, but for the sake of just complimenting what Dan just said about your father.
Oh, well, I used to it goes back to Superman first. My
Mhm.
mom and I she was picking me up from my father's side of the family, my grandparents' house, after spending time with my dad. And she just out of the blue, we were driving right underneath the Verrazano Bridge in Staten Island. And she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Superman." And she goes, and then she was just like kind of not crestfallen, but she was just like, "I got to break this kid's heart." And she goes, "You can't be Superman. You can't fly." And so without missing a beat, I go, "Okay, I'll be Batman." So my dad and I, as a result of watching the Adam West show, we would just always be Batman and Robin. And one kid in nursery school kind of challenged me on that, and I pushed him off the slide because he didn't believe that I was Robin the Boy Wonder.
Hmm.
Wait, that
I
wasn't
Not
even the
very
story I was
heroic.
thinking. That wasn't even what I was thinking. I thought,
Oh, okay.
Vito, didn't you think that your dad was secretly Batman
Yeah, as a result, yeah, because he
as a
wasn't
result?
around. Like I just
Because he wasn't around,
so I just
so he
assumed
must have been
adult
Batman.
fighting crime. Yeah,
Hmm. No, that's cute.
sad.
I
That's sad.
I I had pitched I think it was one of the first things I ever pitched to DC Comics. Obviously didn't fly. But I wanted to do a kind of like a um I'm not even going to tell this whole story. I'm going to tell half this story. Um Forget the DC Comics part. The coolest thing that I remember my father doing when I was a kid was at my 4th or 5th birthday. I think it was my 4th birthday. He dressed up as Batman, like Adam West Batman, you know? And like, he wasn't in good shape, so he really looked like Adam West
Yeah.
Batman, right? Like all like jiggly gray, you know? And so we had the birthday party at the place in Detroit where all the kids had the birthday parties, cake and everybody sings, and there was like you eat peanuts and throw the shells on the floor. And and then we're driving home and we're pulling down to the end of our street where our house is, and there's police everywhere next door. And like somebody got robbed or something. And my dad peels the car out in front of the police officers. He's still dressed as Batman.
Oh,
And he leaps out of the car and he goes, "Don't worry, boys, I got this."
that's
And
awesome.
I was like, yo, that's my father. And I will never forget that. It was
That's awesome.
absolutely amazing.
I love
And
that.
then they told him to get lost, but it was cool. They all laughed and then they're like, "Come on, get out of here. We're working."
Scram. Uh,
Yeah, scram.
Vito, Vito, I have a question to ask all of us that's a more relevant thing from this
Uh-huh.
week.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't know if you guys have any topical questions you want to talk about or bring up, or Dan,
I,
since.
I just want to bring up one anecdote about Jim Shooter. I don't know if
I was gonna,
either
I
of
was gonna
you
say
guys
Jim
have ever
Shooter.
met him,
Yeah.
but I did meet him at the very first convention that I went to when I moved back from Seattle. So this is 2000. And it was the same convention that I met Jimmy and Amanda. I met Chris Batista there, although I don't think he remembers that. And a couple others. And I had this script, like kind of a spec script, basically. I was like, I'm not trying to get a job. This is the convention where I met Eric Larson, and he famously told me he would not read anything that I gave him because he called me competition. Where I thought Eric was a prick for years, but now I realize why he did that. Um, so that was when I met Jim Shooter, and we were just talking and I mean, I knew his name, and we were talking for a good couple of minutes, and he agreed to read it, and he agreed to, email me with, like notes and stuff. Never happened. And somebody said to me, "Oh yeah, probably because he's going to steal the idea." And I'm like, "No." You know, nothing ever happened with it. So it was like
Mm.
a Sabretooth from the X-Men Sabretooth story. And I was just like, am I doing it right? Am I writing it right? Or do I have any kind of storytelling ability? And it never went anywhere, but I did get to give Jim Shooter something I wrote.
That's all. I mean,
That's cool.
that's well. So Dan, do you have one? I have.
I don't have a
Have,
Jim Shooter story, but I have an Eric Larson anecdote.
uh-huh.
Um, it's terrible, and I'm going to do this on YouTube now. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I
You don't
say that?
have to.
Um, I went to. They used to do these really ghetto comic book conventions at the here in North Miami Beach, where I grew up, um, at the Howard Johnson. And this particular, so I went to this one, and it was when Eric Larson had just taken over for McFarlane on Spider-Man. And I had been working on very, you're going to love this, but very McFarlane-esque original heroes of my own, because of course I was. And I wanted to show them to Eric Larson because I was reading his work. And I showed up and I waited. I went up to his table and I showed him my portfolio. And he flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped and closed the book. And he was like, "Have you ever thought about being a dentist?" And I was shattered. I was destroyed, and I did not draw for like a year.
Wow.
True story. True story. I mean, it's
Wow.
funny, but it was like, wow, like I was like so shocked. I wasn't even angry. I just like internalized it,
Oh my
and I
God.
didn't draw for a year.
Wow. The power of a couple of words, man. Like we
Yeah,
all
it
have
was,
these stories. We all have
yeah.
those instances. Sorry about that. I've actually had very good relations with Eric. He's a goofball,
Yeah.
to
I don't
me,
know him at all. I just
right?
that was like
And
a
he's been working on
oh.
Savage Dragon forever, and he's and
Yeah,
actually
uh-huh.
and his art has only gotten better. He's like one of the few artists like Walt Simonson, who
Hmm.
somehow only get better. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So Jim Shooter, just to put him in context for people who are listening, which if you're listening to our show, it's probably because you're into comics, but okay. So you probably should know who Jim Shooter is. But Jim Shooter sold his first comic book script at age 13
Mhm. Legion of Super.
to DC Comics, Legion of Superheroes. He helped redefine Legion of Superheroes. He wrote a bunch of comics. He also helped redefine Marvel heroes. And in fact, and I just wrote about this in my latest newsletter, in some ways, his era of being editor in chief of Marvel Comics is my Marvel Comics. Okay. And in a way, Jim Shooter was my Stan Lee, you know. Uh his name, even though Stan Lee's name was also Stan Lee Presents, Jim Shooter's name was all over there, like, and I really love those comics. And that was the era of like Claremont Byrne X-Men, Frank Miller, Klaus Janson Daredevil, Simonson Thor,
Secret
Mackenzie and
Wars.
Leighton Iron Man. What'd you say? Oh,
I said
well, and then led
Secret
led
Wars,
to Secret Wars, right?
which is a podcast of its own to
Oh,
really
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
it's a marketing genius stroke
Yeah,
that he had throughout this
right.
entire. But go
And
ahead.
and he created a new universe, and that was the first 25 years of Marvel, right? Culminating there. But so It was 1995. I was living on 14th Street between B and C, where there were literally human question marks just littering the streets because they're all on heroin, just kind of like drugged out, just bent over. And it was across the street from Alphabet City, and it was not a great area to live, okay, at the time. And I'm walking out my door, and this happened to me twice. I'll share another story. I walk out the door, a cab pulls up to, I guess, near where I was living, and Jim Shooter just emerges from the cab, and I'm like, and he's unmistakable looking, like giant. He had a very particular face with acne, like he,
Pockmarked, yeah.
there's undeniably Jim Shooter.
I was
And
going
he
to ask
starts
how you knew
running.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what happened is that the cab had went too far, and he jumped down and started running like a giraffe because his body. And I go, Jim Shooter. And he stops and he turns around and we walk up to each other. I go, oh my God, I'm a comic book fan, but also I'm a comic book artist, and I want to draw comics, and I've done some comics and and all this stuff. And like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm running late to a meeting, but he gave me a card and said, email me, and it said like Broadway Comics on it. And I think what had
Mhm.
happened, this was after
Valiant.
he had been fired by Marvel, created Valiant, and I think got fired from Valiant, and I think then started Defiant.
Yes.
Defiant lasted a year or whatever happened, and then boom, he did Broadway Comics because I looked it up for like a year, and that fizzled. So he was just a bad businessman, I think. He was great
Mhm.
ideas, but bad business. Which is true, I think, for a lot of cartoonists, including me sometimes. Anyway, I know where the three of us, and including some others, are discussing future possibilities in business. But so he did say to email. I think I emailed him, never heard back. I didn't take it personally. The second time I
Mhm.
saw him was at a Comic-Con where I went to my table and he was sitting next to me. I was like, I'm
Mhm.
sitting next to Jim Shooter. And of course, just watching the long line of people coming up to him. And he was very charming and like self-deprecating. And like I really liked him. And then the last time
Mhm.
I saw him, I think was at Baltimore Comic Con in 2021, where he was asked to read some awards at the Ringos. And it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen, because I think they gave him like the foreign editions awards. He could not say one person's name, and he kept freaking out. Like he's like I think he thought he was being punished or something, because he kept
Mhm.
flubbing and messing up, and it was just so much fun to watch him flub on stage. In a way, it was I don't know, karmic. I have no idea, because he has a history of being controversial.
Mhm.
But he also did a lot of great things for comics. He's forever part of the history. Like he did a lot, whether you liked it, warts and all. Just put it that way. So
Mhm.
that's my Jim Shooter story.
I would
And
encourage anyone out there to read Sean Howe's Marvel the Untold Story, because when you get towards the later part of the book, it does get into the shooter years, and boy, there's some really harsh stories in there.
oh yeah, yeah. So, but did you guys have any other topics or
I think
recommendations?
I think I'm good.
Somebody said something about something happened today.
Oh, I was doing what you had discussed about reading headlines, and I don't even know if I
Mhm.
got past the headline. Something got voted into that's going to hurt all of us, a lot of
Oh,
us.
it's that big. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Big, beautiful, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that passed. Okay. I just didn't know. I'm
Yeah,
trying not to engage too much,
exactly.
but I also sometimes I'm clueless.
Right.
Um, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So, but that we date our shows a little bit here. Jim Shooter passed
Hmm.
away. The big, beautiful bill got passed.
I won't let it happen. So Jack Kirby, there we said it.
Yeah. Thank you. Before we wrap
And
this up,
I am not in a bathroom, so I can't flush.
well, I actually thought about that. You know what I was thinking?
What's that?
So in lieu of not being able to flush, and by the way, loo, now that I think about it,
Very
is the
good.
British word for toilet. So that's a good pun.
Mm,
What
very
about
clever.
what about farting or something like that?
I don't have it in me unless you do. And I,
I
What
don't have
what
one
did
in
this
you.
podcast just turn into?
We well,
What
it's
just happened? Because I
customary.
missed it.
So usually when I'm home in Pittsburgh, which by the way, Jim
Mhm.
Shooter was from Pittsburgh. Um, when I'm home in Pittsburgh, I record out of a bathroom slash
Mm,
office. It's like being
okay.
Fonzie or something. And so whenever we're done with our interviews, we flush the toilet. But I'm in New York right now. I'm in a room that does not have a toilet in it. There's a bed behind me and there's a TV over here. But
Oh,
I
you could maybe there's a cabinet you can open and slam a drawer
why
back
would I
there.
do that and wake everybody up? Like, what's wrong with you? Let's just thank Dan for his time. And
Yes. And
um,
before you totally wrap it up, if this is going up on Monday, right?
yes,
Mhm.
The 9th, July
yes,
9th, right? So I just announced that the return of the Red Hook,
yes, thank you.
my character, is thank you, is debuting in the Red Hook Star Review,
Mhm.
which is a local Brooklyn newspaper here, and I'm curating a comics page with cartoons by Nick Forker, Ariel Catan, Adam Sverta, and Whitney Matheson, including me. And there's other pages of comics that are really cool. You can read them free online, but also pick up the paper, which is always fun to be in that newsprint, you know.
Mhm.
And we're going to be raising a toast at Sunny's Bar from like 7 to 9. So anybody listening to this podcast and you're in Brooklyn or in Manhattan or whatever, and want to swing by, come hang out and grab a copy of the paper and raise a toast.
That's cool.
Thank you. Um, all right, Dan. Well, I think you have some comics to sit down and experience joy with. Some quiet joy.
Yeah.
Some peace.
All
One
right.
more time, that website for Dan's book, Red Light Properties Unfinished Business, is shop.kinjin, KINJIN.co, not .com, .co.
There you go. Thank you, sir. I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Thank you. We
Um,
appreciate you coming on.
yeah, this was a really fun talk. I like we went to some unexpected places.
We always try. Hunting.
Yay, yay.
Yay, yay. Good night, everybody.
Whoa.